So welcome everyone to our SCCPTA Digital Tools Week. And today we are going to be talking about Google Sheets and Excel. For the most part, we're going to stay in Google Sheets because a lot of the things that you can do in Google Sheets, you can also do in Excel. I will take some time explaining some of the differences and nuances. And most of the formulas, though, do work in both. So we'll focus on Google Sheets because a lot of us at the classes that I've been teaching have been with Google Workspace, and so much of this can be shared and linked with each other. So we're going to focus a little bit more on Sheets, but just about everything that we're going to go into today can also be done in Excel. So let's get started. The first thing is how to get Excel and/or Sheets. So if you have Excel through your program, or if you're a Seminole County student, our students have access through Seminole County Public Schools to all the Microsoft products. Excel is typically something you're going to have installed on your computer, or there's a web version of it that you maybe, if you're in college, some other schools offer a web-based version of it. Either way, your Excel file is most likely going to be on your computer or one of those cloud platforms if you have it. So in this particular situation, I downloaded some sample data sets for us to work with. And there's two versions. So if you're looking at Excel, you're going to see this type of file, which is called a CSV, comma separated value file. And I'm hovering over it so you can see it here. And then you have a typical Excel worksheet. And I'm going to switch the view to details. So if you're ever looking at your files, you know what it is. It'll tell you right here on the side what the type is. So this will be .csv or .xlsx. So you have two different types of worksheets. The difference is, of course, I would get the hiccups right before class. So excuse me if I'm hiccuping. The main difference is CSV files are raw data. They are literally in the background, separated by commas. It's very straightforward, very plain data. Whereas an Excel spreadsheet, you're going to be able to format. So you can put in pretty colors, you can make tables. Most of us are going to be working with Excel spreadsheets. The main times where when you're going to need and or use a CSV file is when you're uploading data. So for example, if you have a contact list that you need to upload into MemberHub, you can do that. So if you're switching or if you're exporting it from MemberHub as well and want to upload it to a different program where you're sending information out, you can do that as well. An example is here at the county. Our contacts are not always automatically uploaded when officers are added. So I extract the officers at least once a month, more often in the beginning, but to make sure our contact list is up to date. So typically when you're uploading and downloading data is when you're going to want a CSV file. For the most part, you're otherwise work in Excel, right? So is everybody panicked now that we went right into some technical information? All right, your stunned silence is excellent. All right. So now let's hop into Google Sheets. So Google Sheets, there's a few ways to get into it. You can just go to your web browser and go to sheets.google.com. So if you do that, it goes into right to your most recent Google Sheets, or if you are, oh no, where did it go? Come back, there we go. If you are in any of the other Google Workspace products, it's right up here in the hamburger menu. You can go right over here to Sheets. Or if you happen to be in your Google Drive, sometimes this is easier if you know where you want your sheet to start. So if I want to put this in my drive, or if I want to come over here and put it in one of our shared drives, I can go ahead and create the sheet in the location that I want it to be. So let's say I'm going to our drive here for SCCPTA. I'm going to go to my media file. And let's say this is where I want my spreadsheet up. So I'm going to click new and I can open a Google Sheet here. Now, before we do that, I'm going to show you something else. When you download files, you can absolutely edit these within Google Sheets, even if it's an Excel worksheet. So there's a couple of options. I'm going to grab this employee data sample file, and none of this information is real. So for the people on YouTube scanning this later, this is not real data. But you notice here, when I put it in my Google Drive, it does not automatically convert it to a Google Sheet. It saves it as a file within your Google Drive, because you can have non-Google files in your Google Drive. You can absolutely do that. But you'll notice here at the end, it puts the file extension and you'll see that it's an X, right, instead of this little plus sign. So you can always tell what's an Excel data or an Excel data file or a Google Sheets, but you can edit Excel data within Google Sheets. So that's what we're going to do now. So we are going to click on it. And you'll notice it's saying it's opening an Excel file in Google Sheets. For the most part, most of us are just using data that's going to look like this. This is a little bit more than some of us will have, but a lot of us will have things that have name, like if it's PTA position, or if it's, we're looking for our awards, like which are our parents, which are our community members, things like that. So we'll have different categories, we'll have names, addresses. Most of us are used to seeing spreadsheets like this, just one by one. Every person has their own, or if it's your store, you've got your list of items, how much they cost, etc. So a lot of us are used to seeing data like that. Now, I do want you to notice up here on the top left, you'll notice it still says .xlsx. That means this is still an Excel file. We are just operating it within Google Sheets, which is very handy. Now, if I would like to, what I can do here is I can file, and I can save this as Google Sheets right where it's at. So this can make it a little bit easy for your embedding or whatever else you may want to do. And I'll show you later what you can do as when it's in Google Sheets. So now you notice, now that I've converted it to a Google Sheet, up here at the left, it's gone where it had that .xls. And if I come back to my drive, it will refresh. And you'll now see that there's two versions. So now these are two completely different files, employee data and employee data for Excel. So we're going to stay within our Google Sheets version of it. All right. So what I will recommend, if you do convert something to Google Sheets, delete the old version. It will absolutely clutter up your drive, and it can get very confusing to people or even yourself if you come back like 4 or 6 months later, like, which was the one I wanted. Now, that being said, if they're both in there, you can always see which one was edited last. So that's most likely to be the one you used last, but not necessarily. So it's always good to keep your drive clean. If you do make a copy of it, make sure that you delete the old version just so nobody gets confused. So we're going to delete that one. And we're going to start in here. So now here's some of your basics. You have rows and columns, and those are kind of the two terms you'll want to remember the most. They're the same in both, excuse me, I have hiccups so bad. They're the same in both Excel and Google Sheets. So your rows are side to side. These are your rows going across. Your columns are the ones going top to bottom. And I like to remember that, think of it as if a real column, it's being stood up, it's vertical. So you've got rows and you've got columns. If you want to edit the size of these, the easiest way is to click on one of these and then just drag it along. So you can always do it that way. Now there's also an easier version. So let's say that we're putting in emails or descriptions. So I'm going to use this one right here because these sizes vary a little bit. Let's say that the size here is small. And we can see from the right here that all of these words are not fitting, right? But we don't know, we don't have to keep scrolling to know how big they all are. And what you can also do on both rows and columns is highlight the whole column. And you see how I have my mouse hovering over the dividing line right there. If you just double click on it, it will automatically size it to the biggest label within that particular column. It does the same thing when you're doing it vertically. So let's say we have one that's really, really small and I need to fix it. I want them all to work. And that's another tip right there. If you highlight all of them, so if I highlight multiple rows and I adjust the size, it's going to change the size of all the ones that you've highlighted. So a word of caution doing that, but you can also highlight them all and then double click them all and it will adjust the size of all of them automatically. It's taking it a second because I highlighted a lot of cells. All right, any question on just your cell sizing and looking at your basic spreadsheet? All right, very cool. The next terminology or the next thing that you want to kind of keep an eye on is down here. These are called your tabs. So you'll start with one tab on most documents. If you want to add another tab to this sheet, you can hit plus as many times as you want. And if let's say you add a whole bunch of sheets, let's say I've added 30 sheets and now I've lost track of, I can't remember which sheet I'm looking at. That's what this menu is for. You can see all of your sheets. So I'll add 3 here just so we can see them. And now I can have a list of all of the sheets that we're using. That's your basic operations. Just like any other Google Workspace product, you can share this with people where they can edit it with you. And one of the things I love about Google Sheets like this is the fact that other people can edit it and be in here and literally live and see this data. Actually, let me do that with you guys. So if I'm going to share this document, it is automatically, because I put it in the team drive, it's automatically shared with everyone who's on our team because we have Google Workspace and we put it in a team drive. Even if you're not using Workspace and you have created a team folder and shared it with everyone, anything you put in that folder, people will automatically have access to. So I'm going to change this. I can add you one at a time, but instead what I'm going to do, because this is just random data, it's not real, there is no security issue. I'm going to copy this link. So this means that anyone with the link can view it, comment on it, or edit. Those are your choices. So what I love to do is when we're trying to work on something, or a great example of when you're going to want to work on Excel spreadsheets together is fundraising, or looking for sponsors, or reaching out to community partners, because you can list all the community partners. You can tag whose job it is to contact them or who talked to them last, add some notes, etc. So those are some great examples of when you would be communicating and working together on a spreadsheet. So I'm going to copy this link and paste it in the chat in case anybody would like to look along with me or hop in the spreadsheet. Now, also keep in mind, when you change it to anyone with the link, that also means that they do not have to have a Google account to get in here. It may not, what that means is if someone makes a change, you may not necessarily be able to see who made that change. So if you notice whoever just hopped in, it does not tell me who hopped in because they were not logged in, and they don't have to be because that's how I shared the link. But if you notice that other person, wherever they put their mouse, and I'm not sure where they're at right now, but if they highlighted one of these top ones, I would see exactly what they've highlighted. Oh, perfect. See, I see that person is now over here and they can see that I'm here. So they can see that I've typed something in. So let's say I'm going to change this one. This person can literally see me change it as I change it, which is what makes this so much fun. All right. So same thing, you can email the file, you can email everyone that is a collaborator on this file. You can download this as an Excel document. So let's say you're working in Google Sheets and someone really wants it in Excel, just download it right here. There's other options available, like I mentioned, there's CSV, or PDF may also be a version that you're most interested in. So if you do go down to download it as a PDF, let's say you want to publish this on your website or print it out, it shows you what it's going to look like beforehand. On the right-hand side, it'll give you a lot of different options. So you can scale it if you know exactly what size you want it to be, but usually most people are going to choose fit to width, which means you want all of your columns on one page and it'll keep going. Or you can have it fit to height, or you can have it fit to both width and height, which may squish it all. So let's see if we do this. See if we say fit to width, it'll keep going, but it's got it all on one page. That's the most common one. And then fit to height is the opposite. It's going to squish it because you see we have a lot of columns. This is absolutely impossible to read. And then fit to page is probably going to be pretty similar because it has squished it so much for the height, it's impossible to read. So those are your options. You can take off the grid lines if you want or put them on, etc. And page order on all of those. You can add headers and footers if you'd like as well. So like if you want to put page numbers on it, etc. All right. Excellent. Next, of course, you can rename your files. You can move it. When we open this file, remember I went right to the folder that I wanted it to be in. But let's say I decide I don't want it in this folder. Let's say I want to go back and I want to put it back in my personal drive. I can move it there. Now, when I move it, a few things to keep in mind. If I move this, it is going to remove the permission of anyone who had it just because they were in the folder. So everyone who's on the SCCPTA team will lose access to it. But anybody who has that link I just shared will still have access no matter where I move it. So if I share it with someone, and let's say I'm going to share it with myself. Let's share it with my own email. Let's share it with myself. That means that no matter where I move this file, and it gives you the warning that they're outside of the organization. But if I've shared it directly with someone, no matter where I move this file, they will still have permission. The only difference is if people have permission to the folder, and that's why they have it. If you take it out of the folder, then they won't have it anymore. Does that make sense? Somebody give me a yes or a thumbs up.
Yes.
Perfect. Awesome. Thank you. And then that's pretty much it. The rest is move to trash. If you want to see the version history, you can always come here. Let's say you come in here and someone has deleted something, or you can't remember if a customer changed, something like that, you can always see the history over here to the right, and it will tell you all of the changes that have been made and by who. Again, if you open it to up to everyone, it will say anonymous. So you may not necessarily know who did it, but if it happens, you can always go back and restore a specific version if you want to. So let's say I wanted to, I can come here and sorry for the hiccups. We can restore this old version. So that's always going to be available to the owner or editors of the sheet. If you have Google Drive, if someone else is an admin, they can also delete the file, and they usually have it for 30 days. It'll stay in your box in case you do accidentally delete it. All right, excellent. So far, so good. All right, editing. Most people know how to do cut, copy, paste, so I'm not going to go into that too much. Another thing that is very helpful is freezing. So if we have a long list like this, you notice that now that I've started scrolling down, I might have forgotten what these categories are. So the next thing you can do is you can freeze this top row. So I can go here to view, and I can freeze the top row. And what that does, it's exactly what it sounds. Is no matter how far I scroll, that top row stays exactly the same. So that way I can keep scrolling and look through my list and remember exactly what categories I was using, right? So like this one doesn't have a whole lot of data in it, I might forget, but now that I've frozen the top pane, it won't do that. Now I can also do it the other way as well. I can do it vertically. I can freeze the first column. So that means no matter how far to the right I do it, the employee ID number will always freeze. And you can do multiple as well. So if you want to do 2 columns, so let's say I want their employee ID, but I want to freeze it after their name too, so I don't forget, you can freeze your columns, and that just helps with your view. It's not actually doing anything to your data. It's not changing anything, but it really helps you when you've got a lot of things to scroll through, and you can freeze that first column or top or whatever you need to freeze to continue looking at it. If you need to, you can go 3 or 4 over, but that is very, very helpful with freezing. You can group things together, so you can move them at the same time. Most of us wouldn't use all of that, but if we wanted to, we can go here, we can group these 2 columns, and that's just going to mean that it'll give us this little bar at the top that we can expand them and close them at the same time. So this can be helpful if you are, let's say you're doing a budget, for example, for the year, and you have, actually, let me undo so I can give you a real life example. So I'm going to take these I'm going to unfreeze these just to put my view back. So now let's pretend that we're doing on a budget. So we have the original budget that we did in the fall. So I'm just going to say fall budget. Then we're going to have our amended spring budget. And then we're going to have our final budget at the end of the year. And then we have our actuals. And I'm going to remember that handy dandy tool I said before, double click, and it automatically expands it where I need to be. So our fall budget for things, and then you'll notice that it's automatically adding to the columns. So we've got stuff and things. This is now our budget. Oops. And our fall budget for things, we were going to spend $500. For spring, we are like, no, we need some more money. We're going to do $750. Our final budget, we didn't actually spend it all. Something happened. It's only $450. For stuff, we'll do the same thing. We wanted to spend $1,000. Then we're like, no, we don't. We're only going to spend $200. And then final budget, we ended up somewhere in the middle. And then what we actually spent was $440 because we're amazing and we stay within our budget. And this one's $499. We'd like to cut it close. So before I go on, I'm going to change this right here. And just as a remember to show you guys, you can change the format of your numbers. So this will make it 1,000 times easier if you are working with numbers in general, whatever numbers they are, whether they're sales, whether their percentages, whatever your numbers are. Right up here along the top of your toolbar is your number format. You can also find it under formats as well. Scroll down and it will give you different types of numbers. So this is very important for consistency in your numbers. So if you put it as currency, which is what I'm going to do, I personally use accounting only because my background's in accounting and I'm used to seeing it that way. Not everyone is, so you could use currency, but whichever one it is that you use, you want to continue to use it to avoid any confusion. That's why I like accounting, because it's going to put any negative numbers in the parentheses, and then it keeps all my dollar signs to the far left. So if you notice, no matter how far I expand it, it keeps my dollar sign over to the left. So for me, visually, I like that better. That's a matter of personal preference, because again, that's my background. So you have your number options there, and you can do your percentages. Date and time is another one where you would want to choose one. And it keeps everything in that format. So if I were to say September 26, 2008, I could do it like that. Some people might try and type it all out. This will convert it and keep everything looking exactly the same, which will help you if you ever need to do anything with your data. So keep that in mind. I changed all of this to currency. And now what groups are going to do, that's what we're going to come back to. We're going to group our fall and spring budget together. Whoops, sorry. We're going to do this because for the most part, now that we're talking, we're having our monthly meeting, blah, blah, blah. We're all talking about meetings. We're just talking about budget to actual. That's what we talk about in most of our meetings. So where are we? How are we doing, et cetera, et cetera. Well, let's say somebody's like, wasn't our budget at so-and-so at the beginning of the year? Well, now I can expand it. My data is absolutely still there, but this is just like a tool for convenience for what you want to see, what you want to hide. So if you are, for example, showing this to your families, not that there's not a secret. They absolutely have the right to your budget, but there's a lot that can go on a screen. So if you're just trying to show it and do a demonstration, you're through your general meeting, you can use this to hide something just so that way everything's not on the screen. You do need to make sure that they do see your budget as it is in the actuals, but if there's extra fluff information in there, you can hide it to make it easier to present. All right. And then zoom in and out. That's pretty self-explanatory, and full screen if you want to encompass the entire screen. If you forget how, it always tells you right up here, which is what I love. Press escape to come back to have your controls up top. All right, I'm going to take a breath. Any questions so far? All right, perfect. All right, insert. This is where we get to start having fun. I'm going to delete these columns just so they don't mess up our data. Oops, those are gone. All right, let's come back over here. So now we can insert, and there's a lot of things we can insert. We can insert cells. So let's say that I have this list and we have a new employee. Now you do have the option up here at the top to turn on filters. This is one, all this is going to do is going to put a filter along the top of where you've highlighted it. It's important to highlight it because you might possibly have a title at the top of your sheet. So let's say if I wanted to, I can insert. I'm going to right click. I'm going to insert 4 rows just so I have myself a little bit of room, and I'm going to say employees. Now my title obviously is not big enough for me. I don't like that at all. So I'm going to highlight all of this, and I'm going to come up here to this handy button, merge and center. So you notice that it just made all of those little cells together. Now it's one big cell, and I want to use my alignment, and I'm going to center that in the middle. Now I want to center it where it is on the cell itself. That's the next option here. This one is text wrapping. I'm going to show you this real quick. So if we have a column like this where it's too long, but let's say it's something where it's a feedback form and people are writing sentences. You don't need a cell that's 5,000 characters long. That's where you would use text wrapping. So if you do this and you put text wrapping on, it's going to expand the cells to where it fits, and it'll just loop down to the next line and continue to grow continue to go. So those are your formatting options here. And then if you want to, let's say you wanted to put this title on your left-hand side, you can have your text go angled. So that's kind of cool. You'll notice that if you're in Seminole County, you'll notice that on the school report cards, they use this angle in their sheets. You can have it go up and down the right. You can choose whatever angle you like for however you like your text to go. Now I'm going to change this and make it bigger. And now that's my title. And all of that is to say, if you just hit this filter button, it may not work because it's going to assume it's your top row, but then it may not be able to do it because it's got a merge cell in it. So that's a word of caution with merge cells. If I were to come down here and merge any cells, I'm not going to be able to sort my data anymore. So I would highly recommend against doing that if you're going to be merging anything, or like if you want to put a note. So let's say for this one, I'm just making this up. People hired before 2020. I'm just adding that note. I'm going to merge this cell. So that way it's over here. oops, I did my text wrapping first, but same thing. Do my text wrapping and merge my cell. So I added that note to your spreadsheet, which is fine. Honestly, if you have a spreadsheet that people don't know what it is, it's great to put a little bit of an explanation on there. Just don't do it down here in your data, because if you start merging things down here, you're not going to be able to filter or sort, and it will be much more difficult to work with. All right. Same thing, you can insert rows, you can insert columns. That's just adding additional lines of data. So let's say we add a new employee. I can insert a row and start typing their name and fill out all of their information. You can also, one of my favorite shortcuts, and this works in both Excel and Sheets, if you hit Control down, it takes you to the very next, to the bottom. So unless you have a space, so I'm going to give you an example here. I'm going to delete this cell. Control up and Control down, left, Control down and Control right, or excuse me, left and right, will go to the next change. So if I have, like right here, I'm going to go back to the top. It's going to take me down until it's a change. So all of these fields had text in it. Now there's a blank, so it stops. And then if I do it again, it's going to go right to the next cell because the next cell is different. So it's going to keep going until it has a blank or it has a text, whatever the opposite of what it is. So if I'm going to go right to left, you notice this one stops on text. If I do it again, it's going to keep going and show me all my spaces. So up, down, left, right, home, Control home, all of those will get you up and down and around your spreadsheet fast. So that way you don't have to sit there and scroll and scroll and scroll. You can always hit Control down and it'll take you all the way to the bottom of your spreadsheet. All right, cool. I know that one was pretty exciting to me when I learned it, but I'm a little bit of a nerd, so it's okay. It's okay if you don't find that as exciting as I did. You can also insert a new sheet, as I mentioned at the bottom. Instead of hitting this plus sign, you can do it up here at the top. A lot of these tools along the top are exactly the same thing. We're going to go through just shorter, shortcuts for it, and you can manage what's on your shortcut bar as well. So next, we're going to go into charts. I'm not going to go into pivot tables, and we're only going to do charts briefly, but we're going to do an advanced version of Excel if you're interested, where I will take a deeper dive into pivot tables because they can be extremely useful. All right. So what we want to do is we want to insert a chart now. So we want to talk about, let's just take our whole thing. We're going to highlight the data that we want to use. Now, here's another keyboard shortcut. Instead of dragging this and showing all my data, I'm going to do my Control over and Control down, just like I was doing before, but to highlight it, I'm going to hold down the Shift key as well. So if you hold down Shift, and right now I'm just hitting Shift down, it's going to select the cells and keep selecting them. So if I do Control Shift right, it's going to go all the way over to the right until it has a stop. Now, because I was on this bottom cell, it stopped here. I'm going to go over one more, and then all the way down to the bottom. And now it has highlighted all of my cells. Normally, you could also do Control A, or you can click this top left corner and select all your cells that way. But because I started my spreadsheet 5 lines down, I don't want these things at the top to be included. So I'm going to come back here, down, over. This is the data that I want. So I'm going to insert a handy dandy chart. Once you click this, it's going to ask you what kind of chart that you want and where that you want it. So I'm going to pick, let's see, let's do one of these column charts. I like that one. Now this is going to ask what we want in it. So we want to know, let's do annual salary. And we'll add this one. Let's take out the country. Take out that label, take out that. We're going to take out the exit date, their hire date, their age. All right, and now it's asking, do I want to use row 5 as headers, which I do, and I want to use column A as labels, that's fine. So we're going to do that. This is what we're going to do. So we're going to insert our setup, and then we are all set. Now we've got to go over to our chart. Where did it put it? I do not know why it is not doing it for me. All right, 1 second. Nope, not that. All right, well, there should be an option to stick it in here and it should be done now, but I don't know where it put it. me just do it here. All right, well, we'll come back to that. I don't know why it's not actually creating the chart. It should. So we'll dive into that more on our advanced class. But if you want to do a chart, you can. Let me try one more time just before it does this. All right. Yeah, all right. There might be an issue with it I need to fix, but we'll come back to that one. You can also insert pictures. I don't recommend this typically in Excel or Google Sheets. If you insert an image, it's mostly going to be over the cells if you're trying to create, but if you're trying to create something with an image, that's most likely something you want people to see. So you'll probably do that in PowerPoint or Canva or something else where it's actually 4 images. You can put images in a cell. And if you're in our reflections class, that might be one of the only reasons you would want to put images in a cell is if you are collecting artwork or you're collecting images for a specific reason. Otherwise, putting images in cells can make it a little bit more difficult to work with. You can insert drawings as well if you just want to scribble on the screen. You can insert functions. Functions make everything amazing. These first two, or this first one up here, the sum, I am going to show you in just a second. That is the most common one you're going to use in PTA, in life in general. We will get into the other ones in our advanced version of the class. Now, link you will probably use. So I'm going to use this one, for example. I'm going to show you a different spreadsheet. In Seminole County, one of the things we do is we keep track of all the social media accounts that are open to the public for all of our PTAs. So not only do we put the text in here, they are hyperlinked. So if you want to insert a link, and that's what you would do, is you would highlight over the cell. One of the differences with Google Sheets than some of the others, and well, you can do this in Excel too, but you can insert a link on just part of it. So if I wanted to link just part of this, it would be, let's say I want to do SCCPTA.com. And now I can apply that link. Oops, and it opens it directly. So you can always insert a link just like you can with other products. All right. You can insert checkboxes and drop-down lists. This is extremely handy for a treasurer. So I'm going to pretend, let's pretend that these names are our budget items. And we're going to change this from business unit to budget line items. And again, we're just pretending. There's very few of these would be something a PTA would actually use, but we're going to pretend these are our budget line items. So one of the things we can do is we can say, has it been spent? And we can say yes or no. Let me expand that a little bit. We can do spent and go to yes or no. So if it's checked, it's going to be yes. So I'm going to delete all of these, make them blank. And now I'm going to turn these into checkboxes. So I'm going to highlight all of them and I'm going to insert checkbox. Yay! That's so easy, right? And so now that's all it is. You have literally made a checkbox so you can check things off. So for example, if you're a treasurer and you've got your checkbook register, you can check off on, you can put cleared up here, you know, has this cleared the bank? Check yes or no. That's a fabulous reason to use a checkbox. Has the, you can even say has the reimbursement, has the receipt been turned in? If you're looking for, you can set it up for vendors. So if you are one of the PTAs that offers a sponsorship level, like so many mentions on our newsletter, so many mentions on our social media, and you're offering those to your sponsors, you can use that, create columns of everything that you've promised the vendors, you know, put the vendor over to the left and check them off as you do them. If you're not sure who checks something off, this is another cool feature that Google Sheets has that Excel does not, unless it's the web version, which most people don't have. But if you go here, you can right click on a cell and show the edit history, and it shows everything that has been changed. So your checkboxes are true, false statements in the background. So that's what you're seeing, but it'll also show anybody who's changed anything. So if I change this from corporate to say fluff or floof, and I right click on it and someone comes in here and be like, what, who approved fluff? Who put that in there? It'll tell me exactly who changed it and a timestamp on when. So love that feature as well. Now, drop down is also very, very helpful for treasurers and also for anyone working membership spreadsheets, because drop down items make it where you have to select a specific thing. So if, for example, these are our budget line items, I'm just going to select them. I'm going to come over here. I'm going to create this. Basically, I just pasted Control-C, Control-V. I pasted all of that data over here. I'm going to come here to data. You see this along the top. This is how you manipulate your data, and we'll get into this more in the advanced thing. But one thing you will tend to use is this data cleanup. So if you have a whole list of things and you want to just narrow it down and see what all of your list actually contains, you can click remove duplicate. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to say remove the duplicate, and this has narrowed it down. That means out of all of those lists, I had 5 categories. Now, fluff was an accident. That shouldn't have been there, so I'm taking that out of my data. Now what I want is I need a drop down in this budget line item to make sure that no one else puts weird stuff in my entries. So I'm going to come here and I'm going to insert, actually I'm going to highlight this whole column because I'm going to insert a drop down list. So now you notice on the drop down, it's going to tell me I have a few options. I can get the data from the list that I just made, or I can come over here and I can copy these. So if I want these, I can do it here. No, let's maybe do it this way, so it's fine. Manufacturing. I can do this, and then specialty products. And you can add as many items as you like. You can change the order of them. I tend to recommend putting things alphabetically just so you can find them. And then that's now our drop-down list for this column. Come back over here. So you notice that all of this has changed into a drop-down, but you notice now that I've edited it, all of these little red arrows to the top or red corners is telling me that there's something in that column that is not valid. It means it is not part of the list that I created. So in this situation, this scenario, these are not budgeted line items. So one, we either need to fix it, or we need to figure out why someone spent something that wasn't in our budget, and we need to have a conversation. So you have a few options with that. Once you create a drop down, you can create help text. So if someone, for example, say, you can put that here, like, this is not a budget item. So if that's what I put, and it refreshes it. Now when I come over here and hide it, come out, it's going to tell me that that is not a budget item and I need to pick one. Now, the other option, you can show that warning that you just created, or you can have it reject entirely. So if I come over here and someone says, they start typing in, I want to do fluff again, Google Sheets is going to be like, no, you're not. That is not a budget item. That really helped me as a treasurer, because when I go to make totals and do pivot tables and formulas, when I go to total and add things up, it was 1,000 times easier, because if you accidentally type fundraiser versus fundraisers, it can be 2 different items when it really should just be the one, just because of a letter or spacing typing. So whereas if you create a drop down for yourself of things that you have to keep in categories, it's going to prevent you. It's a great way to self-check. It will check other people putting stuff in as well, but I love to use it for myself. And then you can just change the way that they look if you want. It can be the little circles as it was before. It can be plain text. So if I do this and it's just plain text, I can still double click on it and it turns it into a drop down. Personally, I recommend the arrow because it takes up the same amount of space as plain text, but kind of gives people an idea that it is a drop down rather than them thinking they have to type something and then seeing the drop down. I think that's a little bit more clear, but those options are there for you as well. Now you say you don't want it anymore, you come highlight the column and come over here to the bottom right and hit remove rule. All right, I know that was a lot. So before we keep going, any other questions? Do we have any questions so far? How are we feeling? Someone type in the chat or come off mute and tell me how we're feeling. Feeling good? Excellent. Excellent. All right, good. Now let's talk about assignments. Who here, give me a show of hands, who really likes assigning work to someone else? I know I do. Let's see. Oh, yeah, we're seeing hands. Who loves assigning stuff to someone else? Absolutely. All right, good, good, good. I do too. So the cool part about Google Sheets, and you can do this if you have uploaded your Excel into Google Sheets, you can still assign people. Again, you can use your Excel sheet just like you would in a Google Sheet. I personally recommend just converting it because it can load faster, et cetera, et cetera. But let's say that someone has put fluff in here and I'm the treasurer and I come in here and I'm like, what in the world? We are not getting fluff. So I need this to be fixed. and I need to ask our co-signer. So I'm going to, in this case, I'm going to assume it was the president, why in the world she did that. So I'm going to come down here. I'm right clicking on the cell. So two ways to do it. Your comment feature is up here as well, or you can just right click it. Again, all of these up here are shortcuts of everything else that I've shown you. And if you hover over them, it'll always just tell you exactly what it is. So I right click and I'm going to insert comment. Now for this comment, I am going to be at Shelly, because I'm going to say, Shelly, what the fluff is fluff. Now I can create an assignment for her. And this is going to create an assignment for her within the sheet, but it's also going to email her and let her know that she has an assignment that she needs to come in here and talk about. So if I assign that to her, generally it takes about 5 minutes. So if you have to assign more than one thing, it does that because if I need to assign a couple of them, it's going to send her all one email. So it's assigned to her instantly, but they usually give it about 5 minutes before she received the email in case you need to add other things. Now, let's say that I'm going to switch to my other email account. Let's say someone else is in here looking at stuff, and I see that they have made that comment for the fluff. Where did it go? Find it. Control F is how you find stuff. Yeah, I know I'm not on that account. So I go to Control F. Sorry, my computer is freezing. While it's frozen, I'll let you know. You can see up here at the top, now that I have 2 logged in accounts, it tells me the other person who's logged in. So I'm on the media account right now, but it's telling me that admin is also in this sheet with them, which can be handy if you're, if you want to know who's logging in and who's working with you. So I want to go see the fluff and see what happened. It is looking for it. Okay, so even though that this comment is not assigned to me, even because I am in the sheet, I can see all the assignments. It's not going to notify me unless I have those notifications turned on, which you can turn on to get a notification for every single change in a document. That is setting yourself up for a lot of emails if it's a document that's regularly changed. If it's something that only changes every once in a while and you need to know if someone makes an update, yeah, turn it on. But if it's something that's getting changed constantly, you probably don't want that notification. But the point is, even if you're not the one who gets notified, if you're in here, you can still see it. So I'm just going around here. And let me close out of that. So if I'm scrolling through this document, you notice this little yellow tag, that's going to let me know that there's something in that cell other than the text. So I'm hovering over it now. And even though I'm on my media account, I can see that the admin account assigned something to the president. So I can come over here and say, I'm just making this, I don't know. She never takes my class. Now, Shelly is actually going to get these emails, so I hope she finds them as funny as I do. But same thing, it probably hasn't sent her the email yet, so she's probably going to get both of these in one email. But let's say I did this a few hours later, or even the next day, she's going to see the email that I responded to this as well. So this kind of creates an email thread, but the assignment is everything's here, everything's done. So she can come in and add a comment. So let's say I ask her a question or I assign something to her and she either doesn't understand what I've asked, because maybe I didn't say it clearly enough, or maybe she needs additional information, or she needs something else from me before she can complete the task that I've assigned for her. She can come in here to reply to it as well. Now, let's say that we're all done. I'm gonna go back into it as my admin account. Now, I do want you to notice that anybody who has access to the sheet can mark this as done and hide the discussion. And when I say hide the discussion, it just takes it out of the spreadsheet and kind of puts it in the background. Anybody who has access to the sheet can mark it as done, which means if they're helping out, mark it as done. That's fabulous. Anybody who is on the thread is going to get notified that it's done. So since I created this assignment, I'm going to get notified. Since my media account commented on it, they're going to get notified. And since it was assigned to Shelly, she's going to get notified. So whenever something's marked as done, that will also create an email to everyone who's on this thread. All right, so I'm going to mark that as done and head back over as admin. And that is how you assign stuff to people. I love doing that. We actually have, I'm going to show you. This is one of the things that we kind of do. I do this, Shelly does this. We have a list of everybody and what they need to get done. So you can see over here, we've asked questions, etc. Like here's one Shelly forgot to, I tagged Shelly in something on July 8th. She hasn't responded. So I came in here Sorry, Shell, if you're watching this video, I'm totally calling you out. But she gets busy with convention and everything. I get it. We all get busy, but I can absolutely come in here and comment again to send her another email and reminder, hey, I need you to come here and look. So we've got assignments to each other, lists, etc. It's very helpful, especially if you're doing something like standing rules or something where you need everybody's feedback. Or let's say maybe you're doing a calendar. You can tag people outside of your group too. You could tag your principal and say, hey, I want to do we want to do carnival on this day. Does it work? You can do that. A word of caution with doing it with your principals. Not all principals like to communicate with that. So if you watch the communication class, make sure you're communicating with your principal in the way that works best for them because they are extremely busy. And if you are going to start assigning stuff to people and using this, if your board's going to assign people, and this, you can do these assignments in Google Docs, Google Sheets, Google Slides. You can do these assignments all throughout. I love doing it that way, but make sure someone who's new, make sure you tell them what's happening, because if they're not familiar with Google, they're going to see that email and be like, what? And they may either panic, they might just delete it and think it's spam. So make sure you're having that communication. All right, we are almost out of time. The last thing that I want to show you here is the formatting. So if you notice that I got all of this data, when I downloaded it, the template that I used automatically had it in these beautiful colors. When you're using raw data, so let's say you've downloaded a list from MemberHub. I'm going to come over here. Actually, let me make a new sheet. So I'm going to come over here. I'm going to paste special because when you have a few options when you're pasting. So let's say you want to paste the format. What that means is it's going to paste that pretty blue and green all throughout. That means it's not going to give me any of the data. It's just going to give me the colors. I can paste only the values, which is what I'm going to do. That means it's going to extract just the text that you see on the screen. You can extract just the formulas. We'll get into that in the advanced class, etc. So you can paste a couple different ways. So I'm going to do values only. And this is what a lot of your data is going to look like when you first download it or bring it in. Just raw data, everything's black and white, very, very plain. So what we're going to do is we're going to highlight all of our columns. You notice since I'm highlighting along the top, it does all of them. So I'm going to do formatting and alternating colors. So if you were in Excel, you would call this formatting as a table, but in Google, you say alternating colors, and they have some default ones here, but you can always change it if you like. Me personally, I like to have our PTA colors in here. So I've used our hex codes. If you notice me hovering, I'm not sure if you can see because it's tiny, but you can put in your actual hex code for your PTA color. I like to do that. And sometimes if it's money, I like to put green. Well, I mean, you can change these colors, whatever you like. And now that I've done that, it automatically creates it where it looks more like a table and separates things. So if I do want to add some more rows at the bottom, and you'll see this option here, it will continue to format them the same way that I had before. That's one of the things I love the most about Google. And as I mentioned, you can do just about all of this in Excel spreadsheets as well. Let me bring this back up. Spend a couple minutes in here just to show you guys. It's pretty much all the same. The only so pros for Excel can work better with a lot of data connections on the back end. Most of us are not going to be doing that. So that's why I will always recommend Google Sheets for most of us, because you can do all of that tagging, you can do all of that sharing. The whole point of it is collaboration, because you notice the only person who can be in here is me, and I would need to save this file and send it, and the file versions can get changed. Whereas if I am in, let me go back here in my drive, if I need to upload let's say I need a completely brand new version of something, I can come here, I can right click on it, and I can find information. I can upload a new version of that exact file. There can be different things of it, all kinds of different options that you can do. So if I went here, etc. Anyway, I'm not going to get into that. I'm getting off on a tangent again. So Excel, a lot of this is exactly the same. You'll notice, so if our columns are not the right size, I can come over here, highlight them all, double click right there on one of the lines. It automatically adjusts everything. If you are highlighting them, you can insert, you can do your column charts just like you could in Excel, or excuse me, Google Sheets. Hopefully it'll work over here so you guys can actually see what it looks like. I think I have too much data. I think that's the problem. Of course, it's going to freeze on me. All right, for our advanced class, I'll make sure we have a little bit. Yeah, that's what I did. Way too much data. So let's delete that so you guys can see. And we'll do just, no, stop it, stop it. Let's just do ethnicity and age, 2 columns. That'll make it a lot easier. And so we're going to insert a table so you guys can see. All right, now again, there's still a whole lot of options. So that is something that we would want to combine. Now, if we had a smaller, because with a table, most of it, you're only going to want like 5 or 6 options. So if you're inserting a table, usually you're going to have percentages like maybe how many kindergartners there are, et cetera, something like this. So you can insert with your data, having just a couple will be way better. You can sort. So once you have your options at the top, you can sort A to Z. The one thing I do like about Excel better is trying to find something. So if I'm looking for engineers, when I do it in Excel, whatever's left is automatically going to do it that way. Now, if you're in Google Sheets, one of the biggest differences is if I'm filtering on this data and I want to find something, you need to clear, and I'm glad I remember this, you need to clear, because if I started typing, so let's say I typed in engineering is checked, it's going to leave that in the list. So if I hit OK, you notice it did not do anything. So if you're in Google Sheets, one of the most frustrating things that I have found, and the difference is you have to clear all of this first, then type in engineer, then select it back, and then hit OK if you want to filter on something. That is one of the drawbacks there. But everything else is very much the same. As I mentioned before, you know, you have your wrap text, it's just in different places, wrap text right there. You got your number formatting right here. So if I want to change this, it's currently currency, but maybe I want to change it to percentages. I want to change to just regular numbers, etc. You can move your decimal over and have just whole numbers. Lots of everything is pretty much interchangeable. The pivot tables are very different in how they are set up, and each one, we'll get into that in our advanced class, but actually I think my email just popped in so you guys can see that. Now that I tagged myself in a comment, this is what that email looks like. Now it's getting assigned, they see who got assigned it, who tagged it, etc. And those are what those emails look like when someone gets an assignment.